to Mike Lubie, but huge FSU football fan. Love Bobby Bowden. And they were up like 61-0, I think, on Southampton College. Team that had just come in from Montauk, to play FSU in Tallahassee, and he's screaming, "I can't believe you're running!" I mean, you have to love the Fanatics a little bit, but at the same time, I mean, can it get a little dicey when you're trying to coach a team, from a rational standpoint? How are you, Coach Mac?
I am doing great. That brings back memories with Bobby Bowden. Bobby Bowden and my dad were really close friends, and I got to know Coach Bowden pretty good, to be honest with you. I really thought a lot of him as a person and a coach, and know all his boys, and so it's that brings back great memories for sure.
Well, and still with me, and I really like Bobby Bowden. I mean, he was as down to earth as it could get. And, I've told the story a few times. I was doing some work in Tallahassee on a baseball game, a series, and we decided to maybe go see if we can get an interview with Bobby Bowden. We go into the SID's office or the sports office very humbly, and he sees us from an open door from his office at the front desk, and he says, what are you boys here for? And we say, well, Coach, I mean, to tell you the truth, we were really trying to see if you might have like 5 minutes to talk to him. Invites us in, sits there, talks to us for a couple hours. I mean, as if we were his best friends. And, that was the kind of it was very easy to like him and root for his teams to do well. But he also had a hard-nosed philosophy. And we were talking about this earlier, Coach, and I'm sure you feel the same way. We've lost some of this in college football. Because we're talking about how the Gators backed out on that series with the Hurricanes, saying, "Oh, we got that SEC schedule." But these kind of rivalries and the idea that, and maybe you have to have some of this incorporated into your approach. Let's take on the toughest teams we can take on. Maybe we're getting trounced early on. Now we become competitive. Next thing you know, we're beating them. And, before you know it, the Nebraska AD is calling and saying, "Oh, listen, Bobby, we can't do it in 2024. But, I mean, it was a novel approach, and Howard Schnellenberger also embraced that, completely when he brought the program from the
Right.
boots, the depths of extinction, maybe, all the way up to national championship status.
Right. Well, I think that there's no doubt the kids want to play the best schedule they can play, so do coaches. Also, the underlying thing now is trying to make the playoffs, right? So everybody's positioning themselves, and when this started, which is a good thing for college football, but also when it starts, it's kind of like a little bit like the pro mentality that you see. We just need to win our division, keep our guys healthy, because really it all starts when you make the playoffs. And so I think that a little bit of that's thrown in there, some issues into trying to play the best during the season, so to speak, as much as you can. I think that's a little bit of the difference there. Going back to Bobby Bowden real quick, I'll tell you two stories. One story on him that really meant a lot to me personally in my heart. When I watched the movie We Are Marshall, the scene where Bobby comes in and lets them do that. I mean, that shows you his heart.
Yeah.
And he saw that more important than that rivalry, but he was going to try to beat him when he played him for sure. Well, my dad passed away in January of 2016. And that year we had a phenomenal year at Colorado, and I won the National Coach of the Year, all these awards. So they had the AFCA Coach of the Year award. And Bobby came in and called me and wanted to have dinner with me and some of his friends just to say, I know your dad's not going to be here because he's passed. And he had dinner with me just telling me about my dad and how thankful he was. And so that meant the world to me. And that's the kind of person Bobby Bowden was.
Just a quick thing. I mean, it was not the single most amazing thing. I don't know if you ever watched his coach's show because you're probably, doing your own work. But when, a guy would call in and go, "Hey, Coach, good to talk to you. Well, what about this kid, little Johnny Jones?" And Bowden would know everything about him, man. He would go, yeah, he's from Apopka, and his father is a I was like, how the hell does he know this? I don't even know. This was when he was getting older, too. I mean, we weren't sure if he knew what day it was, and he would be there with his finger up and just rattle this stuff off. It was amazing.
Yeah, I truly think he had the touch that he could really care, but he could really push them. Yeah. And that's a hard balance to have, and the kids knew that. And I think that's why they rallied around him for so long, and he was amazing for so long.
Coach, so it's year 2, and you're trying to figure out, especially in this era with transfers and NIL, and your life. I saw someone say, Billy Napier, it's year 2 in Florida. Year 2 is on the hot seat already, which I don't even know how that's friggin' possible going into year 2 that you're on the hot seat. How are you taking what is different this year with your roster, with your team, and how you're treating everything in year 2 as opposed to year 1?
Well, our team is a close team. I sat down and realized, in this era, you have to change. There's so much change. You can't just stay the same. You got to change, and that's part of life, right? You got to learn how to change. You got to learn how to adapt. And so we spent a ton of time this spring and a lot of time this summer just doing a lot of what I would call, and people call it team building, but really just relationship building, just hanging out with everybody, understanding how important each individual is, and trying to grow them close, because you could used to kind of take a while. You could bring those freshmen in and different things. They sat a little bit. You built them. It's not that case anymore. You have transfers. You have guys that leave, and some of them love the place and leave, but they leave for other reasons. And so when you get your team, you have to get them still playing together. There's still a cohesiveness. I think the teams that can be more cohesive, you've got to have skill in athletes. There's no doubt about it. But the teams that can get more cohesive quicker and unite the locker room quicker, and it's a lot harder to unite the locker room than it's ever been in college football, ever been. And so I think that's a key factor that we've been working on and diligently looking at. And I said, there's a lot of things you can control, but the one thing we can try to control is our culture. And that's something we're working tirelessly at trying to do. But we have a lot of young men that are excited about playing, and we've already practiced 6 days. We've had 6 good practices. We had a good physical practice yesterday, and today's a day off. We'll have some meetings this afternoon, and then tomorrow we'll crank it back up again. So we're right in the middle of it, and it's a lot of fun.
Well, and I happened to catch a few of your games last year. And this is
there were some good ones and there were some bad ones.
Well, I mean,
we just got to keep going. That's part of building.
Here's what I saw, Coach, and this is what I really liked, and I think it's a good home, and maybe it comes in kind of an oddball context, but and Lubie knows I've been booking a friend of mine's bets forever on college football, straight up 1-on-1, right? So a couple of times it was the only game on. It was like on CBS Sports Network. Right. And I think we were playing like Louisiana Tech. Does that sound familiar? A horrible night out. And I was getting, a little bit of an advantage in terms of the points that I was being handed. And what I saw was your guys were competing. It's the old thing where you put the 4 up and it's the fourth quarter and we're going to go right to the bell, man. I don't care. I'm going to go out on my shield. Your guys stayed with it. I mean, it wasn't like, they ever threw in the towel. It seemed like they were competing. And as I recall, wasn't that like a horrible night weather-wise? And there was one game where you're just playing in like a mudslicker, so it seemed, even on artificial turf.
Right. We ended up winning that game in double overtime. It was really, really exciting. We kept battling. We got down and kept battling back. That was really exciting.
It was great
for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a good game.
But you had some quality play late.
Yes, sir. They got some fight to them and exciting. They love playing here, and like I said, there's something about the South Florida kid. I've coached all over the country, and there's something about the South Florida, Dade, Broward, South Florida guys that it's such in their DNA. It's a badge of honor to be a football player, and these kids love doing that, and it's fun coaching them.
All right, what are you seeing so far? You mentioned some good practices.
We are
optimistic.
We have a lot of speed on our football team. We've improved our speed. Our size on the lines is bigger and better. So all of those areas are noticeable in practice. We're still relatively young, so you still got to get that playing experience, and we're trying to work at that as hard as we can to try to do all of that in our practices. The one thing that's different for college football and pro football, everybody knows it, you don't really have any preseason games to try to figure things out. First time you strap it up and go, it's all live and real. So you have to do it against each other, and the temperament and the mentality and the toughness factor, you have to develop it against each other. So it's a delicate situation, because if you do too much, you get too many people hurt. So you just got to kind of rep it along, and our guys have really been buying into it and practicing really hard.
Coach, we brought up, I don't know if you were on or not when we were talking with Tony Segretti about conference realignment. And I know you guys don't have time to worry about those things. I know your job is focusing on your kids. but it is the sport you love. It is a sport you're involved in. And look, you're coaching a college program, and I feel like there's got to be some kind of a curiosity to it. My fear is not only the big programs forming these big conferences, but you've seen in recent years group of 5 programs finding their way in the top 25, finding their way to be in discussion. Look at UCF with playoffs. So hope is there and was there. What is your concerns? What is your thoughts on this conference realignment where it feels like we're really getting to 2 major conferences and then a bunch of sort of smaller conferences? What are your thoughts on the conference realignments, and how do you think it will affect FIU and you guys going forward?
Well, there's a lot of thoughts I have on it, but like when I was at San Jose State, we ended up 21st in the country, and so we were in that. And then at Colorado, when we turned it around, we were playing Washington for the Pac-12 championship, and everybody said if we could beat Washington, we might sneak in the 4. If certain things happen. We got beat by Washington. They're really good. So we've been right there. I think adding teams to it, making it go to 12, will help in a lot of ways. The one negative I don't like about it, and I think everybody's kind of figuring, is how much farther it pushes over into, January and deeper, and all the things going on there. If there's a way to, start a little bit earlier, I think it would be better, because it messes with the college calendar. And I know a lot of people don't care about that, but we do, because kids start school. So, if they're playing late in January and people are trying to recruit, and you can't enroll in school anytime you want to. So there's a little bit difference on that calendar. But I think that, I think it's kind of moving a little bit that way. I would agree. If it really goes hard that way, I personally believe they should have a group of 5 national championship. And what I believe they should do is the 1 group of 5 team or the 2 group of 5 teams that get in the 12, they're in it. Then they make a bracket of 16 other teams, and we play a tournament.
Oh, cool.
And I think we would get television recognition. We would have a big deal. It would make a lot to the universities. I think when that starts happening, to me, that's the way it should go. And I think we could still play in the same bowls we're going to play in and use those, and then have one national championship game. The FCS has got a lot of pub out of their national championship game. If we did one, I think we would get a ton amount of pub. In the playoffs, people would watch that. And so you don't mess with the 12. There's going to probably get 1 team in the group of 5. They go, like Tulane did last year. Everybody else play in a tournament. And use the bowl system for that. And I think it would be a great deal. And that would also generate a lot of revenue for the group of 5.
That's interesting.
So that's
my thought. Future in sports administration for sure.
I love that idea.
When will you become the commissioner of one of these conferences, Coach? That was good stuff. I'm thinking, wow, we've been listening to fans call in with a solution for this forever, and different commentators. No one's ever come up with a plan as simple to execute, and that makes as much sense as that. That's great. Usual suspects competing for the national championship this year. Is there a team out there, Coach MacIntyre, that maybe you have your eye on, and you're saying, even though we don't play them, these guys are going to be really good, and people are sleeping on them?
Wow. I don't look at it that much. I just know that watching these teams on film like we do in the off season, because all coaches watch a ton of film and steal different ideas and watch it. The size and athleticism of the O-line and the D-line for Georgia is ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous. They got all the skill, but it's amazing. Because you watch the game, they bring in their second teamers and their third teamers, and they're huge, athletic, massive. I mean, I still think it has to go through Georgia. I know they won it last year, but I'm not saying because of their skill guys. I'm just saying because their O-line and D-line there's not a better one, I don't believe. And I don't think there's a deeper one. So that's why they can keep playing and playing and playing and playing. So I would still say it's Georgia.
All right. Well, I'll give Nick something to complain about later on. He's going
to
look for establishing a weight limit on offensive linemen.
That's where Georgia has separated itself.
So Nick hasn't proposed a weight limit on offensive linemen from SEC conference teams as he watches these animals coming out there. Unbelievable. Well, it sounds like you're have things rolling in the right direction, Coach. We love having you on the show. So hopefully you'll be a frequent visitor throughout the season here.
I would love to be. We open up 0 week on CBS Sports Network.
Yes.
Beautiful.
It's a 9 o'clock kickoff here, so you got to take a nap that day so you can watch our whole game. All right.
All right. And like I said, you guys compete to the end. So
Yep.
for you
Yes.
degenerates out there, FIU already has a place in my heart. It's fantastic.
Also, I think the thing's exciting for us this year is we already have 7 games. Yeah, 7 games on national television, which
nice.
we've never had that before. So the exposure, because we're going to play 4 Wednesday night games, and so on ESPN and different things. So it's going to be a great year for us, and we're excited about that, and be a lot of exposure for FIU football and also for the university. So
It's
appreciate
funny,
guys.
too, because, you're playing on an oddball night, but,
Right.
you have the stage to yourself, which is great.
Exactly.
And you can have any number of, 100 games to choose from on a Saturday if you're watching college football. But, you're sitting at home at night, sucking down a cold one. FIU football is a very, very entertaining package. So thanks so much for being with us, Coach. Always a pleasure.
All right. Have a great day, guys. See you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Coach Mike MacIntyre.